Hello everyone, let's get started. Good morning and good afternoon. Hello everyone, let's get started. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today we will be talking about. Hello everyone, let's get started. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today we will be talking about backing up of VMware-based environments. We are joined by Paddy Srinivasan. Paddy is Zmanda's VP of Engineering and co-founder of the company. Paddy is also the architect for our VMware backup products and has been involved with storage and backup business for several years. So we are pleased to have Paddy join us for this webinar today. Before we dive into VMware backup, let me take a couple of minutes to briefly introduce Zmanda to some of you. As several of you know us already, we are the leader in open source backup and cloud backup space. Today, we conservatively estimate close to about 1 million systems protected by our technologies worldwide. And several of these users are users of our community editions, but we also have more than 2,000 users of our enterprise editions in more than 60 countries. Our philosophy is openness. We believe in open source, open APIs, and open formats, which is very different from backup software that you will find from other vendors whose business model depends on locking up your data in a closed format. So for example, if you are in an organization whose retention policy is several years, if not several decades, and you back up using software which is storing your data in proprietary format, you may be in deep trouble 10 or 15 years from now when you actually want to recover your data. So our software backs up your data only in formats which are recoverable by using native operating system tools if you have to do so in a pinch. We also provide open APIs which make our products very extensible to be integrated with newer platforms. And in fact, because of these APIs, we were able to very quickly integrate our software with, for example, the latest APIs from VMware. In last few years, we have also done quite a bit of R&D in cloud backup space. In fact, we recently shipped third generation of our cloud backup. Our cloud backup software is used worldwide to back up data center data to public and private clouds. So today the product that we will be focusing on is Zmanda Enterprise. We recently shipped version 3.1 for this product. For those of you who are our customers already, we strongly encourage you to try to upgrade to Zmanda Enterprise 3.1. It has significant enhancements, especially in the areas of scalability and robustness. So very quickly, architecture of Zmanda Enterprise is as follows. A backup server for Zmanda Enterprise runs on a Linux or Solaris server. Actually, for today, we are going to assume that the backup server is running on Linux because that is the configuration that we support VMware in. Backup server also acts as your media server, so it can back up to disk, tape, or cloud. In this example, we have shown the Amazon S3 a public cloud, but we can also back up to a private cloud. And backup server acts as a server for clients and agents which are running on systems which you want to protect. So for example, if you are protecting a Linux client, you run the Zmanda Linux client on that particular system. If you are running SharePoint on Windows, you run a SharePoint agent on that system along with the Zmanda Windows client. Few months ago, we released our VMware client, and recently we released our second generation of our VMware client, which is what Paddy is going to focus on now. So with no further ado, I will give it to Paddy.
Hi everyone. Good morning. This is Paddy here. So I'll walk you through the new features in Zmanda Enterprise. And then more, the future slides will focus mainly on the VMware backups. So in Amanda Enterprise 3.1 was released about more than 3 months ago. Since then, we have had a couple of patch releases. So we do intend to provide a release almost every month, which will, most of the time it contains bug fixes, but it does have some additional small features. So the key features in Amanda Enterprise 3.1 is support for VMware ESX servers, support for NDMP using version 4 protocol so that we can back up NDMP appliances without data going through the Amanda server. We have extended our support for Microsoft Exchange to the new version 2010, and we are also started supporting differential backups of Microsoft SQL Server and Exchange Server. The Zmanda Management Console, which is the web-based console product, which manages Amanda Enterprise server on clients, has been totally redesigned and have significant improvements in Amanda Enterprise 3.1. Some of these improvements have been based on suggestions provided by customers and other feedback we have received from the prior releases. As with every release, we extend the versions of the platforms we support. For example, we are supporting newer versions of Ubuntu, Debian, and Fedora. In general, we try to keep up to date with in terms of Linux distributions that are being supported at every release. So the next slide basically talks about how we integrated Amanda VMware agent with Amanda Enterprise Server. So this picture shows how the Amanda backs up the VMware guest VMs running on VMware ESX. The picture says ESXi, that's an example. We support ESX 3.5 and 4.0. We support only licensed versions of VMware ESX. The guest VM can be Linux, Windows running SQL Server, Linux running MySQL, or Windows Exchange. Amanda Enterprise performs the backup of this VMware remotely from the Linux, the server. So what this basically does is complete backup of the guest VM without installing Amanda Enterprise Client on the guest VM. Of course, we support installing guest VM, Amanda Client on the guest VM. In that case, we basically treat the virtual machine as a physical machine. Okay. And the other part is what it shows is about the media side. That is, we continue to, as we add more applications, you will see that we continue to support all the devices we support, for example, disks, tapes, tape changers, Amazon S3 Cloud, or NAS appliances.
So, Paddy, let me ask you a question. So, does this mean a user can back up a live VMware machine to a cloud using our software?
Yes. So this basically you can back up any guest VM which is up and running without shutting it down. Basically, it's a hard backup, and the way we'll go through details on how it works in the future slides. And you can back up to any of these devices which have been shown. That's the cloud, tapes, and disk backup. So the integration of any application with Amanda is done through the Amanda Application API, which is a consistent API. So all the features supported by Amanda is actually available. So the integration is very similar to the way Amanda has been integrated, for example, with Oracle or even Microsoft Exchange. The VMware Application Agent is a licensed application, so it requires a special license on top of your Amanda server. The application is actually part of the Amanda server software, so you don't have to install any additional Amanda software to perform VMware backups. It is also bundled as part of our Zmanda backup appliances, which we'll talk later. On the guest VM or the hypervisor ESX, there is no software that needs to be installed from Amanda. And we support only licensed versions of VMware, ESXi, and ESX starting from 3.5. There are some advantages with the backup of ESX 4.x, which we'll talk later. And the reason we support licensed versions is purely it's a restriction from VMware. The APIs that are available to perform hot backups are only available on licensed versions. They are not available on the free versions of VMware.
So let me ask you a clarifying question here. So where does our VMware backup software run? So as you said, we do not have to run any software on the hypervisor or on the guest OS. So where does actually the software run?
The software runs on the Zmanda server. So the Zmanda server acts as a client for the VMware on the same machine. So in terms of configuration, this makes it very easy to do because there is no additional software that needs to be done if in a virtualized environment.
Okay, so let's say if a user has 5 hypervisors running ESX, all of their backups is controlled just from our one backup server. Is that correct?
Exactly right. Yeah. So there's one machine where you need to perform the installation, configuration, and you can perform backup and recovery, everything from the same machine. And of course, everything can be managed through Zmanda Management Console.
Okay.
So the next couple of slides actually gives more details about the application agent, which we do. So the first is we have integrated with vStorage APIs for performing full and incremental image level backups. So image level basically means we back up at data blocks level. And this feature is available mainly in vSphere 4.x, which got shipped with VMware 4.x. So this is a big difference between the support for ESX 3.5 versus ESX 4.x. So ESX 4.x has additional features, so we take advantage of it. So the big key advantage, 2 advantages are there. One is only the data blocks that are used are backed up in full backups. So a full backup of a guest VM, a virtual machine, consists of the configuration files and the VMDKs, which is the virtual machine disk. So the earlier version, if you don't have vStorage API, we had to back up the complete disk. Whereas in a full backup integrated with vStorage API, we back up only the data blocks that have been used. So for example, if you have a virtual machine that has 1 terabyte of disk and you're actually using only 100 gigabytes, then the full backup would be closer to 100 gigabytes rather than 1 terabyte. The second aspect is we can do block level incremental backups. This feature actually is implemented using VMware functionality called change block tracking. So this is a functionality that is available in VMware 4.x, also called vSphere as a marketing term. So you need to enable the change block tracking for all the guest VMs of interest. And so only the data blocks that changed between 2 backups are backed up. So when we do, for example, differential backup, which is backup level 1, only blocks which changed since the full backup are contained in the differential backup. So in my prior example, where I had a 1 terabyte disk and a full only 100 gigabytes were used, and we do backups every day. Let's say second day we do an incremental differential backup, that's backup level 1, and your change of data was only about 10 gigabytes. Then our data backup size, the differential backup size will be closer to 10 gigabytes. The reason I'm saying it's closer is Zmanda supports backup compression and other efficiencies, so the actual data will be significantly lesser than the 10 gigabytes which I'm talking about.
So there is one question here. So it appears that the benefit of differential backup is reduction in storage on the backup media, but does it also help with data transfer on the network?
Yes. So the one thing is the way the backup works in the case of VMware is we issue a command to do consistent snapshot of all the disk drives, which is basically the VMDKs for a particular guest VM, and we transfer the data over the network to the Amanda server. So the efficiencies which we talked about both in the full backup and differential backups are, for example, the reduction instead of full backup will be just 100 gig in my example, and differential would be just 10 gigs, implies that we need to transfer lesser amount of data over the network. And of course, we need to write lesser amount of data to the media too. And this is a significant benefit in all media, and is much more significantly important in the case of a cloud backup. So I kind of talked about the procedure which we use. We basically do discover all the virtual disks that are associated with the guest VM, take a consistent snapshot of the disk drives. So when I say consistent snapshot is VMware tries to quiesce all the I/O that is being performed to the disk drive so that we get a snapshot at a point in time because the I/O is quiesced to that particular VMDK. And in fact, we quiesced all the VMDKs particular of that VM being backed up. And we figure out which data blocks that need to be transferred, and only those data blocks are transferred. So the data blocks being transferred will depend on whether we are doing a full or differential backup. In the case of Windows, probably some of you are aware of volume shadow services. Windows volume shadow services is a feature that is available on all Windows platforms that Zmanda supports, that is Windows XP and higher. That provides a capability to do consistent snapshot of any Windows drive, basically, and it will do acquire all the I/O. It could be a file system, an application, and so on and so forth. So when we do a VMware snapshot, it works with the Windows volume shadow services to obtain acquires the I/O so that it gets a consistent backup on the Windows side. So in some ways, in technical terms, VMware snapshots are VSS storage provider. So moving on to the next slide, one thing which I want to highlight is this efficient backup of vStorage APIs is a functionality that is available in Amanda Enterprise 3.1.2. It's not available in Amanda Enterprise 3.1.0 and 3.1.1. So, and the current release is actually Amanda Enterprise 3.1.3. So any customers who are running older versions, say 3.1 and 3.1.1, are eligible to be automatically upgraded to 3.1.2 and 3.1.3, and you should find Amanda Enterprise 3.1.3 on your network downloads page. That's the Amanda network downloads page. So in the case of the actual backup process, the data actually moves after snapshot is taken. It's moved from the ESX server to the Amanda Enterprise server. In the case of it, we do use a temporary staging area for the backup and recovery. This staging area is used so that the backup are done more efficiently, and it's basically the media does not become a bottleneck in the whole process. Amanda has another concept of Amanda staging area. We recommend turning it off, and by default in Zmanda Management Console, if you configure a VMware DLE, it's automatically turned off unless you explicitly turn it on, and there is no purpose in turning it on. I introduced a concept called DLE for people who are not familiar with it. It is the object. It is the object that is being backed up by Amanda's server. That is the smallest entity that can be backed up. It could be just a single file. In this case, in the case of VMware application, is a guest VM. Amanda Enterprise VMware agent does not require VCB Windows proxy server. VCB is VMware Consolidated Backup, which was a technology which was used by VMware prior to ESX 3.5, and this is no longer supported with the release of the 4.x versions. because the vStorage model is much more superior to the VCB model because it required additional machines and so on. Let's take a look at what are the restore advantages for restoration. Zmanda Management Console supports restoration to any ESX server. So, for example, if you had a guest VM running on ESX server 1, you can restore the backup of this guest VM to another VM on the same ESX server, that is ESX server 1, or you can restore it to another ESX server, say ESX server 2 with a different name or the original guest VM name. This feature makes it much easier to do disaster recovery. Only consideration is ESX server versions must be compatible. So as long as you are within the minor release of the ESX server version, you should be able to do this functionality. You have also an option to restore a particular VMDK or a combination of VMDK plus the VMX, the configuration file. This is an option that is available for customers who would be interested in if they lose a particular VMDK or a guest VM, for example, an accidental deletion on your hypervisor. One thing to note is since the APIs that we use are pretty standard APIs that are provided by VMware, there is no restriction on the guest OS that is being used. This implies that the guest VMs that are being backed up could be running any platform that VMware supports, which ranges from various versions of Linux distributions and various flavors of Windows. Even though the Amanda server is supported on Linux distributions and Solaris, the guest VMs can be any distribution which VMware supports. One thing to note is the vStorage APIs, which I refer to, require VMware hardware level 7. That's a restriction which placed by VMware, and I would advise you to take a look at what hardware version level 7 means on the VMware websites.
So, Patty, going back to the point about being able to restore to any ESX server, can a user still have the original virtual machine running and just recover the new virtual machine to another place?
Yes. So if you're restoring to a different name on the same ESX server, or if you're restoring to another ESX server, for example, you're restoring a guest VM from ESX server 1, the backup of that VM, to another server, ESX server 2, then the original guest VM can be running. There is no reason to shut it down. The only reason you need to shut it down is, of course, when you're restoring to the same ESX server with the same name.
Okay. So in effect, the software can be used to initiate new virtual machines on other hypervisors as well.
Yes. So you can pretty much, it works out something very similar to what a VMware clone operation would be. So moving on to the next slide. So all of our communication, that is the Zmanda application agent communicates with the ESX hypervisor. So it needs to have a user which is defined under ESX. ESX now support domain users, so it can be a domain user. And it needs a certain level of privileges to perform backup and recovery operations. The minimum set of privileges that are required to perform a backup and restore operations are documented. So on the VMware, before you have to create a user, we suggest to create something called a backup role, so you can have additional users. And you can, since it's supported on a domain, you can use the same user along with a role on various ESX hypervisors. For example, if you're backing up multiple hypervisors. So this is the first step in the configuration of VMware agent.
So this screen is actually from a tool from VMware.
Yes, it's part of this functionality is available from on vCenter or part of vSphere clients. On Amanda's side, as I said before, all the configuration is done on the Amanda server, and you need to configure through the Zmanda management console. The Zmanda management console, as some of you know, is organized as backup what, how, when, and where. And the last is activate the backup. So the only aspect that changes when you configure a new application is the changes to backup what. So this example assumes you already have a backup set configured, that is basically a backup set created. You click on backup what and you select the VMware application. So as you can see, it shows all the applications that are supported by Amanda, such as file systems, databases. Under applications, you will have to choose VMware ESX virtual machine. So this is the creation of the backup object, or in Amanda terminology, the DLE. This describes the smallest unit of what a backup can be, what can be backed up. And in this case, the smallest unit for VMware agent is a guest machine. So you need to configure and provide values for various fields, such as the ESX host name, which is the host address of ESX hypervisor, the virtual machine name, the name of the guest VM that is being backed up, the name of the data store used by the guest virtual machine, and the ESX user and the password that you have created in ESX client tools. And this user, ESX backup user, as shown in this example, should have the role to perform, that is basically privileges to perform backup and recovery. You can choose encryption. Since all the backup is performed on the server, you can only choose the server encryption or none, as in the example. On the compression, you can choose server. The two ways of compression, one is best and the other is fast. So the best gets you the best compression ratios, but you sacrifice the time taken to do the compression. In the fast, you sacrifice the compression ratio, but the backup windows are shorter. You can choose different levels of compression and encryption for different guest VMs or different DLE. There are other parameters which are available under advanced options. These parameters are pretty much similar to the other Amanda backup objects. One thing which we kind of by default it's not selected is disable staging, even though it says not recommended. For VMware, we recommend that, so it's not selected by default. You can see on a left-hand side bottom corner. So after you perform the configure backup what, you can perform all the backup operations. You should be able to perform automatically. The configuration is checked and you can start performing the backups. In terms of recovery, the recovery is also organized in Zmanda Management Console as what, where, and actual restoration. In restore what page, you describe what you want to restore. So first thing you tell is the backup date or the date onto which you want to restore. So you basically can pick up a value like today or yesterday, or you can specify a specific date like what's been done here. One aid to doing this is if you're looking at the reports page, you can click on all the hyperlinks on the reports page and directly fill in the value for the backup date. The information icon provides various date and timestamp formats in which you can specify a backup date. On the host name, it provides you, there's an option. Clicking on that without any value shows you the list of hosts that were backed up on the date for this backup set. The what's being restored, you can actually click on it and get the list of values that were backed up, list of the backup objects that were backed up. You have two options in the way you can do restoration. One is you can explore and select individual files such as VMDKs or VMX files. Or you can do an express restore where you don't want to select, you just want to restore everything. Sometimes the explore operation does take time depending on how many VM decays are present on the machine. So if you're just restoring the complete VM to another ESX server or the same ESX server, you can just click Express Restore. If you click Express and Explore and select, you will see what's shown under Select Directories and Files to Restore from. Here the ESX4_1 DLE is the name of the backup set. Here we see there are two files. One is a VMX file and one VMDK. And the name of the guest VM is vSphere Management Assistant. And we have selected everything. You select all and you just click the two right arrows to say that these two are the files which have been selected. And at the bottom of the page, you can say click next to go to the restore where page. On the restore where page, you have various options as to where you can restore to. So the key part is you need to specify the restore host name as localhost. Those values are fixed actually for VMware because the backup was done for localhost and all operations are performed from the Zmanda server. The options which you have is where you want to restore to, and that needs to be specified in the specific format, which is the UNC format of the hypervisor / which data store and which VM name. So you can restore to the original machine or you can restore to another machine. And you can specify different locations based on different names. For example, in this case, the restore is being done to hypervisor with IP address esx32.zmanda.com. After that, you can go to the restore page and it shows you a summary of what's been selected for restoration. So you see restore from, it shows the initial host is always the local host because we're backing up and restoring from the Zmanda server. And it shows you what is being backed up from and where you're backing up, restoring to. It also shows the list of tapes that are needed. In this case, we need a particular tape with the label ESX4_1 DLE-001. You can label your tape in any fashion you want. In the case of tapes, you can include the barcodes also. If you're using a disk or S3, it will show you what labeled volumes that are required. And of course, those are readily available. You don't need to make it. In the case of tapes, if you're storing the tapes offsite, you'll have to bring them in. So when the tapes are ready in the tape changer, or if it is an S3 or it's a disk, you can directly click on restore. You will see the status of the restore on the restore summary box. Once the restore is complete, you should see the VM actually restored to the original machine or to the another ESX hypervisor, and it will be automatically started. The instance of the VM which is restored will be automatically started. So you should be able to, if the VM comes up, boots up, then you should be able to directly log into that VM.
So actually a question on the restore. Does Zmanda do complete media management? So when I'm restoring a particular virtual machine, at that time, do I need to worry about supplying the correct disks or correct cloud location?
Okay. So all the information in the case of disks and cloud is automatic. We don't need to know. You don't need to do anything actually. In the case of tapes, as you can see, it asks for the particular tape. And it will be, once you start the restore process, it will prompt you saying that make sure this tape is available in the tape changer. If the tapes are already available in the tape changer, it will be automatically picked up. Okay. And one thing to point out is, since the integration is through the application API, so all functionality of media management which is available in Zmanda are all available. So here we showed an example of backup and recovery using Zmanda Management Console of a guest VM. You can actually do the same operations using the command line if you're interested. This is a summary of all the options that we have in the restore. So just walking through it once more. You can restore the original ESX server and the same guest VM. In this case, of course, the VM should not be running. You can restore to a different ESX hypervisor with a different name, and in this case, the original the VM that was backed up can be running. Or you can just restore to the Amanda server. This becomes an option where you can restore it as a bunch of files on the Amanda server, which you can use it for another some other reasons, such as your VM is not, ESX is not available right now. You can move it on your own later to the ESX hypervisor. So far we talked about restoration of the complete VM. So if you want to restore the files, individual files or folders from the VM backup image, you'll have to do a temporary restore of the VM image to another hypervisor, and you need to perform configuration steps for each OS. For example, if you're restoring to another VM, and since it automatically will be booted up, so you just need to connect to it. For example, on Windows VM, use the Windows Explorer, pick up the selective files of interest. So let's take a look at the two approaches for backing up VMware from the Amanda in Amanda. One is to back up by installing Amanda Client on the VMware guest. This is a case where we treat Amanda Client as basically the VMware guest as a physical machine. So it's very similar. One big advantage is, since there is a piece Amanda software running on that machine, you will definitely get an application level consistent backup in all platforms. The recovery of applications is easier. For example, if you want to restore a particular file, there's no two-step procedure, and we'll be able to perform application-specific recovery steps. For say example, such as Microsoft Exchange or Oracle or SQL Server. It is also easier to move from the virtual machine to the physical server using VMware virtual to physical operation. This may be something which, for example, if your intention is to run the on production in a physical machine, so you can try it out on a virtual machine and then move it to a physical machine. And the other part is you may produce a smaller backup archive. This is another thing which depends on the user requirement. So, for example, if you want to back up only one folder, not the whole VM, then you have such options. But the disadvantage with this approach of installing Amanda Client on the VMware guest is you have to perform an Amanda Client installation on that guest VM. This implies that you have to manage Amanda. It's basically only thing is you need to install some software on that machine and keep it up to date. And there are cases where we do not support Amanda Client on certain platforms such as NetWare, where you don't have any other option. Basically, since client is not available, you will have to back up the VM as it is.
So there was one question here, Paddy, but can a customer do both? Can they do image level backup as well as guest OS level backup?
Yes, you can do both. In fact, you can do both on the same guest VM. So you can do an image level backup define it as a backup object. In another backup set, you can define based on the particular files on a particular Amanda client. One thing you can see is it does serve a little bit different purpose. So it may make sense in some cases to do both.
So different purpose, meaning the image level backup is more of disaster recovery, whereas backup of files and applications within guest OS is for day-to-day backup and recovery.
Exactly. So in the case of disaster recovery, you want a complete copy of your guest VM so that you can restore it to the state it was at the time of the backup. Whereas in the case of your backing up a selective files or a selective application, this is for recovery from any accidental deletion of files or application issues and so on and so forth.
In fact, I think I recall one customer that we have who has multiple virtual machines, and they are doing image level backup for one of them for disaster recovery purposes. and guest level backup for other 7, because all machines are very similar to each other from an operating system and application standpoint. So they can get the benefits of both for disaster recovery and backup.
Yes. So the 2 points which I kind of want to kind of extend to is, one thing is, even though I said it can be done on a different backup set, it's on the same Amanda server, so you don't need another Amanda server. And you have also a choice of which media you're backing up to. So you can say, hey, I want to back up the Amanda client using installed Amanda client to a disk, because the goal of that is for immediate restoration. Whereas in the case of a disaster recovery backup of complete guest VMs, you may want to back it up to cloud, because that provides much better from the disaster recovery scenario. So as I talked about this a little bit earlier, we do provide Zmanda backup appliances, and these backup appliances have all the necessary software installed for performing VMware backups. I should say there's one exception for which we don't have permission to redistribute, that is the VMware CLI package from VMware, which needs to be installed on the Zmanda backup appliance. We do provide we have Zmanda backup appliance available in 2 flavors. One is the SUSE that runs less 11, and the other option is running CentOS 5. Zmanda backup appliance can be run on any VMware product, starting from VM players to ESX hypervisor. Of course, we recommend running it on ESX hypervisor because they perform much better than, say, for example, VM player. But you can try it out. Zmanda backup appliance is a fully functional Amanda server, and it's already pre-configured to perform disk backups. So if you want to, this is a good starting point to get introduced to Amanda and probably keep it doing it for the production. In cases when you want to do larger machines, then you can do virtual to physical operation and move it to a physical machine if you want to.
There's a question, Paddy. Can Zmanda backup appliance back up both physical and virtual machines?
Yes. As I said, it's a fully functional Amanda server, which implies all the functionality which is available in the Amanda Enterprise is available on the Zmanda backup appliance. It can be managed remotely using the Zmanda Management Console, which is a web-based user interface.
Okay. So in some sense, it is an orthogonal technology. I mean, while of course it is relevant while we are talking about VMware backups, you can use the Zmanda backup appliance to back up non-VMware stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
The one key advantage is you can have this Zmanda backup appliance as a guest VM on the same hypervisor as, for example, as the picture shows, on the same hypervisor you have Oracle Linux and SQL Server, where you can do image level backups, or install Amanda client on this guest VMs and do Amanda client backups.
Yeah, also, actually, on the licensing side, there is an advantage. The Zmanda backup appliance comes with one VMware hypervisor license. So if all you wanted to do was VMware backups, this is the only thing you need to buy. You just buy one Zmanda backup appliance, which runs as a guest OS on the hypervisor you want to back up, and it will back up unlimited number of systems on that particular hypervisor. So it is a very easy VMware backup solution.
So this is a pretty inexpensive solution in that respect for virtualized environments. So the next slide talks about what's coming up. As I said earlier, pointed out various Amanda Enterprise 3.1 releases. Within the release itself, we have made significant improvements. So we are part of VMware partner program, technical alliance partner program. So we do get preview of all their features to test and try out. So they have some significant features coming down the pipe. So you will see more features and enhancements to VMware. And from an Amanda perspective, we plan to do an integrated file recovery, starting with Windows and probably other operating systems in the future.
But on that, as you pointed out today, the workaround is to recover the virtual machine as a different name on the same hypervisor
Yes.
or a different hypervisor?
So there are two solutions for that today. You can always discover to another Windows machine or a Linux guest VM on another hypervisor or the same hypervisor and pick and choose what files you want. The other solution is to install Zmanda Client on that. So that's the other option which you have.
So if you get the file level recovery through Zmanda Client and disaster recovery for the image level recovery using VMware Client.
Yes, that's correct. So that pretty much ends the presentation, and so these are a list of customers that use Zmanda today.
So while we go through this, actually, please send in your questions so we can present them to Paddy. Let me very briefly go over the kinds of customers that we get. Web and media is actually our home. Folks who build their infrastructure on LAMP stack, Zmanda tends to be the next port to call. We are doing very well in the government sector. This is because of our open formats, because folks in these organizations tend to require much longer retention policies, sometimes as many as 30 years. So there's almost no choice but to use software which backs up in open formats. Research and education is another home for us. Our original software was actually written at a university, and most universities around the world have some form of Zmanda, which is the world's most popular open source backup software installed in them. We are also found a lot in telco and service provider space, where these customers are building solutions as a service for their customers. So when they want to offer backup as a service to their customer, they come to us. And backup, being a horizontal application, is in general found in overall manufacturing and service spaces. Okay, so at this point of time, let's take questions. Actually, the first question is on our licensing. So the question is, how do we license our software, and more specifically our VMware client software? Paddy, can you go to the slide which shows Zmanda Enterprise network chart while I answer this question? So let me actually take the question. So we license our software as an annual subscription on a per protected system basis. So our pricing is based on, for example, if you want to protect 5 Linux servers and 2 Windows servers, typically you will buy 5 Linux clients and 2 Windows clients for 1 year, or as many years you want the subscription for. Now for VMware, our pricing is based on per hypervisor. So for example, if you have 3 ESX based hypervisors in your environment and you want to protect virtual machines on those hypervisors, you basically need to buy 3 VMware clients from us, and you can protect unlimited number of virtual machines on each hypervisor. And our pricing for each hypervisor starts at $300 per year. So that's our standard SLA. So for $300 per year, basically you can protect unlimited number of systems. You do need to get a backup server, so you can get it in one of 2 forms. Either you can just buy backup server as software and run it on a Linux server, or you can buy a Zmanda backup appliance, which is a single virtual machine which has all the capabilities of Zmanda Enterprise. And the backup appliance starts at $600. So if all you wanted to do was backup an unlimited number of virtual machines on one hypervisor, basically you need to get this one Zmanda backup appliance, which starts at $600, and it will back up as many number of machines as you want on that server and on that hypervisor. And if you wanted to extend that to back up virtual machines on other hypervisors, you simply buy our VMware client, which starts at $300. So hopefully that answers your licensing question. There was one question on media management. What happens if access to tape or cloud is down for some time?
Yes, so that's the reason why we have some sort of a staging area. So the backup is actually performed, and it is stored in the Zmanda server, and then you can move it to the cloud or your actual media later when the issue with your media is resolved. For example, if you're backing up to cloud, you can expect failures of internet connections during that time. So you should be able to, this will provide some fault tolerance in those cases.
Okay. Another question is specifically for backing up to the cloud, do we compress data before shipping to the cloud?
Yes, as I showed in our Zmanda management console, there are various compression options, and all the data is compressed before it goes out to the cloud. So it is compressed and it can be encrypted before it goes to the cloud.
Okay. And of course, the benefit of differential backup using block level incremental is also very valuable there.
Yes, I agree.
There's one question of, can different backup sets go to different clouds?
Okay, so the answer is yes. You configure a media type for each backup set. So in theory, you can have the same data being backed up to different pieces of cloud by putting them in the different backup sets. Nothing in Amanda prevents you from doing that. And if your question was if you want to do backup to different Amazon accounts within the cloud or different Amazon S3 locations, because Amanda does support all the S3 locations where it's located. That is basically US, Europe, and Asia is covered. So if you want different locations, that's also possible within the same backup set.
Okay, great. Please let us know if you have any other questions. To just provide a summary, Amanda Enterprise now has a VMware client, which we call Zmanda VMware Client, which allows for live backup of virtual machines running on VMware infrastructure. It requires a licensed version of VMware. We recommend VMware 4 onwards. We do support VMware 3.5, although not all features are supported with VMware 3.5. And we perform live backup of these VMs to media of your choice. That media could be disk, tape, or cloud. So at this point, it doesn't appear there are any other questions. We will make these slides available on our website, and we will send an email to all of you with a download link. We expect to have another webinar in next few weeks. Our focus of the next webinar will be on cloud backup as well as on MySQL backup. So look for announcements for that on our webinars page. Thanks, Paddy, for giving us valuable information on VMware backup, and thanks everybody today for joining us.